The morning had started like any other. The sun had barely climbed above the rooftops, casting a golden light across the city's streets. People moved quickly, their faces set with purpose as they made their way to work, school, or errands. Cars honked as they tried to squeeze through the morning traffic, and the aroma of fresh bread and coffee from the nearby cafes drifted through the air. Among all this motion, a woman walked calmly, her steps measured and steady. She wore a simple yet professional outfit, nothing too flashy, but enough to show she carried herself with confidence. In her hand, she held a small leather folder, and in her mind, she was thinking about the work she had just finished. The day seemed ordinary, and she expected it to remain that way. As she approached a busy corner near a small cafe, she noticed a small commotion up ahead. A man shouted, his voice rising above the normal city noise, but she could not make out the words at first. Curious but cautious, she continued walking, keeping a safe distance from the scene. She had learned long ago that most conflicts were best avoided, especially in a city where people's tempers could flare quickly. She had no reason to be involved. Fate had its own plans. A uniformed police officer stood in the middle of the sidewalk, his posture tense. He was speaking firmly to a young man who seemed nervous and confused. The woman slowed her pace, trying not to draw attention, but the officer's gaze shifted toward her. His eyes narrowed as if he had suddenly decided she belonged in the situation he was already handling. She noticed him pointing subtly, then stepping closer to her path, blocking her from moving forward. "Ma'am, I need you to stop," the officer said, his voice firm but not yet angry. She paused, tilting her head slightly, trying to understand why he had singled her out. She had done nothing wrong. Her heart beat a little faster, not out of fear, but from the unexpected tension that now hung in the air. "I'm sorry, officer. Is there a problem?" she asked calmly, her voice steady and polite. She kept her hands visible and relaxed, showing she had no intention to resist or cause trouble. The officer took a step closer, and the crowd around them began to notice the interaction. Phones were raised, some people whispering to each other, wondering what was happening. She could feel the pressure of the public eye, but she did not flinch. She had learned that staying calm was often the best strategy. "You match the description of someone involved in a situation nearby," the officer said, his tone firm. "I need you to come with me for questioning." She blinked, slightly taken aback. "I'm afraid there's been a mistake. I was walking past, and I haven't done anything wrong. Can you tell me what this is about?" Her voice remained polite, but there was a firmness in it that suggested she knew her rights. She did not want to escalate the situation, but she also knew that compliance without cause was not required. The officer's eyes flickered with impatience. He gestured toward her, insisting she follow him. "Step aside, please. This won't take long." "Oh." She shook her head gently. "I'm happy to cooperate if you provide proper identification and explain why you believe I am involved. I need to understand the situation first." His face hardened. He was not used to being questioned in this manner. Most people complied immediately, afraid of confrontation or believing the authority of the uniform. But she was different. She carried herself with a quiet authority, a confidence that made the officer pause for a brief moment. He glanced at the growing crowd, some of whom had begun to murmur and record the encounter. His frustration grew as he realized she was not going to comply without justification. "Ma'am, I'm telling you to come with me." "You're not making this easy," he said, raising his voice slightly. The people nearby now had their attention fully on them. Some whispered, others exchanged surprised looks. The city street that had felt ordinary just moments ago had turned into a small stage for a conflict that no one expected. She remained calm, taking a slow breath before responding. "Officer, I am not resisting. I am asking for clarity. I would like to know the reason for this detainment." Her words were deliberate, her tone controlled. She did not want to provoke him, but she also did not want to submit to an unjust action. The officer's jaw tightened. He glanced around nervously, aware of the crowd and perhaps realizing that his actions were now being watched. But his pride would not allow him to admit a mistake so easily. He stepped closer, reaching out as if to take her arm. "I said, come with me," he said firmly. She held up her hands slightly, signaling that she was not resisting. Please do not grab me. I will come with you if you can provide proper reasoning and identification for this action. I have done nothing wrong. The tension in the air was thick. Bystanders had started whispering among themselves, some clearly recording the interaction on their phones. The officer's face flushed, a mixture of frustration and uncertainty crossing his features. He had not expected anyone to confront him like this. Most people would have followed his instructions without question. But she stood her ground. A moment of silence hung between them, broken only by the distant sounds of traffic and the low murmur of the crowd. She could feel the pressure, but she stayed composed. Her mind raced through the possibilities, knowing that staying calm and measured was crucial. She also knew that revealing her profession too early might escalate the situation. So she carefully considered her next words. "Officer," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I am willing to cooperate fully. But I also have rights that must be respected. I believe there has been a misunderstanding, and I would like to resolve this peacefully." The officer hesitated, his hand lowering slightly. He glanced at the crowd, sensing the growing attention and the recording phones. He was now aware that any misstep could be witnessed and judged by the public. Still, he did not fully understand who he was dealing with. She noticed a few people in the crowd nodding, some whispering encouragement. Their presence added a subtle pressure, but she focused on maintaining her composure. She knew that the key to handling the situation was patience and clarity. She did not raise her voice, did not show anger, but her calmness carried an unmistakable authority. The officer's voice softened slightly, though it was still firm. "I just need to verify your identity. It will take a minute." She nodded. "Of course. I am happy to provide identification once you explain the reason for this action." Her words were careful, emphasizing cooperation while maintaining her stance. At that moment, the city street seemed to hold its breath. People paused in their activities, watching the interaction unfold. The air was filled with anticipation, and a sense of justice began to take root in the minds of those observing. The woman's calm and intelligent approach was starting to shift the dynamic, and the officer could feel it. Though he did not yet understand the full scope of who she was, the first part of this encounter set the stage for what was to come. It was a story of patience, confidence, and quiet authority standing against a situation that could have easily spiraled out of control. The ordinary city street had become a place where knowledge, composure, and courage would soon reveal their power. Though the full revelation had yet to come, for now, the woman remained steady, calm, and resolute, prepared for the next steps in a situation that was about to change in ways nobody expected. The tension on the street was growing, and the people around could sense that something important was happening. Their curiosity was piqued, and their attention was fixed on the woman and the officer. Some stopped their morning routines, pausing to watch as the scene unfolded. Phones were raised, and whispers passed quickly from person to person. The city that had felt ordinary just moments ago now seemed to hold its breath. The officer's frustration was becoming more obvious. He had expected a routine compliance, a simple verification, and instead he faced a woman who did not back down. She stood calmly, her posture straight, her eyes steady on his. She did not show fear or aggression. She simply maintained her ground, her hands visible and relaxed, signaling her willingness to cooperate under the right conditions. "Ma'am, I am asking you again to come with me," the officer said, his tone rising slightly. "This will be easier if you just comply." She shook her head gently, her expression composed. "Officer, I am happy to cooperate. I only ask that you provide me with a clear explanation and proper verification for this detainment. I have done nothing wrong, and I wish to resolve this peacefully." The officer's face hardened. He was not accustomed to being challenged. Most people simply followed orders without question, but this woman's calm assertiveness threw him off balance. He gestured toward her with one hand as if to insist, but she remained in place. Her quiet strength was unyielding. It made him hesitate for a brief moment. The crowd's whispers grew louder. A few people began commenting to each other. Some expressed concern for the woman. Others were impressed by her composure. The presence of witnesses was now a subtle pressure on the officer, though he tried to maintain authority. He could feel that any misstep would be noticed, recorded, and possibly shared. "Step aside and come with me," he repeated, his voice firmer. He reached out as if to grab her arm, but she stepped back slightly, not to resist, but to ensure her personal space. Her movements were measured and deliberate. Every step she took showed awareness and caution. She knew that reacting impulsively could escalate the situation. She refused to give him any reason to act aggressively. "Please do not touch me." "Officer," she said, her voice calm but resolute, "I am asking for a proper explanation. I want to cooperate, but I also expect my rights to be respected." The officer's hand hovered, unsure. His training and authority were now in conflict with the reality of a composed, confident woman standing before him. The crowd sensed the tension. Some murmured encouragements, while others looked on silently, waiting to see how the confrontation would unfold. The woman's mind worked quickly. She considered her options, thinking about the best way to handle this without causing further conflict. She had dealt with many difficult situations before, though never quite like this in public. She understood the power of calmness, of measured words, and of presenting facts without emotion, clouding judgment. "Officer," she continued, her voice carrying clearly despite the surrounding murmurs, "I am willing to provide identification. I am willing to answer any reasonable questions. I only ask that you follow proper procedure and respect my rights. I have not committed any crime, and I would like this situation resolved peacefully." The officer's brow furrowed. He could see that the situation was shifting. The woman was not just calm. She exuded a quiet authority that made him second-guess his actions. He glanced at the people around, aware that several of them were recording, and he felt a subtle pressure that he could not ignore. Still, his pride made it hard to back down immediately. A few people in the crowd started whispering about what they were witnessing. One person commented to another, "She's not scared at all." "That's impressive." Another said, "I hope he doesn't do something stupid." The atmosphere was a mix of tension and admiration. The woman's calm approach was turning the situation into a small lesson in courage and composure. The officer took a deep breath, trying to regain control. "I just need to verify who you are," he said. "It won't take long. Please cooperate." "I understand," she replied, "and I am happy to cooperate. That is why I am asking for clarity. I want to do what is required, but I will not be forced or intimidated into compliance without proper explanation." Her words were careful and deliberate, designed to assert her rights without escalating the conflict. The officer hesitated, his hand lowering slightly. He glanced at the crowd again, sensing the scrutiny of the people watching. The murmurs were growing, and some began to openly comment on the officer's behavior. This attention added a new layer of pressure, one that the woman had handled gracefully from the start. A small child in the crowd tugged at their parent's hand, looking up curiously. The parent whispered a reassurance, but both were clearly captivated by the unfolding event. The woman noticed the child briefly, offering a small, reassuring nod before returning her attention to the officer. Her awareness of her surroundings and the people around her reinforced her calm, composed demeanor. The officer tried to regain authority by speaking louder, hoping to intimidate her. "You need to come with me now," he said, his voice carrying a mix of frustration and urgency. "This is not optional." She remained steady. "Officer, I am not resisting. I am asking for proper procedure. I will cooperate fully, but I expect my rights to be respected. There is no need for force." The tension was palpable. The crowd sensed that the situation could go either way. Some people took out their phones to record the interaction, while others simply watched silently, captivated by the unfolding drama. The woman's calm, clear-headed approach was turning what could have been a routine encounter into a public display of patience and authority. At that moment, a colleague from a nearby office happened to walk by and noticed the situation. They paused, watching, unsure if they should intervene. The officer noticed the hesitation in his own posture as well. He was beginning to realize that the woman was not an ordinary person. She carried herself with a presence that demanded attention and respect. She continued to speak calmly, reinforcing her willingness to cooperate while maintaining her rights. "Officer, I understand your role, and I respect your duty. I am asking only that we proceed according to the law. I have not committed any wrongdoing, and I would like this matter resolved without conflict." The officer's expression shifted slightly. He could see that continuing to escalate could create a scene, and the crowd's attention was adding to the pressure. He paused, weighing his options, uncertain how to proceed against someone who refused to be intimidated, yet remained respectful and composed. The woman's composure had become the center of the scene. People around her were noticing her clarity of speech, her calm demeanor, and the quiet authority she carried. The officer could feel the shift in the energy around them, the subtle force of her presence against the backdrop of his frustration and pride. He knew he was being watched, judged, and recorded. She took a slow breath, maintaining eye contact and calm body language. "Officer, I am ready to cooperate fully. Please provide your identification and the reason for this action. I am not here to cause trouble, but I will not be intimidated or detained without cause." For a brief moment, the city streets seemed to pause. The surrounding noise of traffic, the murmur of voices, and the hum of daily life faded slightly against the tension between the two of them. The woman's calm authority was undeniable, and the officer's confidence wavered. He realized he was facing someone who was not only prepared to stand her ground, but also knew how to navigate the situation with intelligence and poise. As the morning continued, the crowd's attention intensified. People whispered, exchanged glances, and recorded the encounter. The officer was forced to reconsider his approach, realizing that any aggressive move could have consequences, especially with witnesses present. The woman's strategic calmness was beginning to influence the entire scene, creating a subtle but powerful shift in power dynamics. She continued speaking with measured words, each sentence reinforcing her willingness to cooperate while asserting her rights. "Officer, I want to resolve this peacefully. I am asking for clarity and proper procedure. There is no reason for force, and I am here to comply as long as the law is respected." The officer finally lowered his hand completely, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. He glanced at the people watching, aware that the situation was no longer just a private encounter, but a public display. He took a step back, uncertain how to continue without appearing unreasonable. The woman remained composed, her steady gaze never leaving his. She had managed to maintain control of her own behavior, to influence the crowd's perception, and subtly shift the officer's approach without raising her voice or causing conflict. Her patience, clarity, and quiet authority had transformed what could have been a tense confrontation into a carefully managed situation, setting the stage for the next steps that would soon reveal her true strength and position. The officer stood there, unsure of how to proceed. The calm demeanor of the woman had shifted the balance of the situation. He could feel the eyes of the crowd on him, and it was clear that any wrong move could escalate into something bigger. He tried to regain control by clearing his throat and speaking louder, but she did not flinch. Her composure remained intact, and the calm authority she radiated was almost tangible. "Ma'am," he said, a slight tremor in his voice betraying his frustration, "I need you to come with me. This is not optional. You must comply." She took a slow, steady breath. "Officer, I am willing to comply, but only if you follow the proper procedure. I would like to see your identification and the reason for this action. I am here to cooperate, but I will not submit to an unlawful detention." The officer hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. It was clear that he had not anticipated someone standing up to him in such a composed and informed manner. The crowd had noticed the change in his demeanor and murmured among themselves. Some expressed admiration for her calm approach, while others wondered what the officer would do next. Seeing an opportunity, she continued in a clear, controlled voice, "Officer, you have an important job. I respect your role, but it is also important that you respect the rights of citizens. I want to resolve this peacefully, without conflict, and with proper procedure followed." The officer's hand twitched slightly as if he wanted to reach out, but he paused. The tension in the air was thick. The crowd leaned in, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Cameras and phones captured every detail. She knew that patience and clarity were her allies in this moment, After a few tense seconds, she decided it was time to reveal more about herself. She opened her folder just enough to show a glimpse of a state-issued card. "Officer, I think it is important you know that I am a state lawyer. Attempting to detain me without cause could have serious legal consequences. I would like to resolve this without further incident, but you should understand my position." The officer's eyes widened as he took in her words. The crowd gasped softly, some whispering to each other. Did she just say she's a lawyer? The realization spread quickly. He took a step back, suddenly aware that he was not dealing with an ordinary person but someone with legal authority and knowledge. You're a lawyer?" he stammered, struggling to regain his composure. "Yes, officer," she replied calmly, her voice steady. "A state lawyer. I am willing to cooperate fully, but any action taken against me without proper cause could have serious consequences. I am asking for clarification and proper procedure." The crowd's attention intensified. People whispered among themselves, some nodding in admiration. The atmosphere was a mixture of surprise, respect, and tension. The officer could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The realization that his actions could now be scrutinized publicly added a new layer of pressure. He cleared his throat, attempting to regain some control. I wasn't aware," he muttered, his voice trailing off. He glanced around nervously at the people recording, realizing that any aggressive move could be witnessed and shared widely. The presence of the public had shifted the power dynamics, and he now understood that he had underestimated the woman. She remained composed, maintaining eye contact and calm body language. "Officer, I understand mistakes happen. I am not here to create conflict. I am asking for proper procedure and respect for my rights. Let's resolve this situation peacefully." The officer's hand lowered completely now. His face showed a mixture of embarrassment and relief. He realized that continuing to press the matter could lead to serious repercussions, both legally and socially. The crowd sensed the shift in his attitude, and murmurs of approval for the woman grew louder. Some bystanders began recording more actively, speaking quietly to each other about the situation. "She handled that so well," one said. "I can't believe how calm she stayed," another added. "Imagine being in his shoes. Realizing you almost made a huge mistake." Crowd's admiration reinforced the woman's calm authority, creating a sense of collective respect for her actions. The woman took another measured step forward, maintaining a safe distance but demonstrating confidence. "Officer, I am ready to provide any necessary identification and cooperate fully. I only ask that the proper process is followed and that my rights are respected. We can resolve this quickly and professionally." The officer nodded slowly, clearly reconsidering his approach. He extended his hand slightly as if to gesture for her to follow him, but then hesitated. The realization that he was being watched and that the woman was fully aware of her rights made him cautious. He could feel the gravity of the situation pressing down on him. The crowd's whispers grew louder, expressing admiration and surprise. People were beginning to understand that the woman had not only stood her ground, but had done so with intelligence and composure. The city street, once a simple backdrop for the morning commute, had transformed into a stage for a lesson in courage, patience, and authority. The woman remained calm, her voice soft but firm. "Officer, we can handle this without conflict. I am asking for clarification and respect for my rights. Please follow the proper procedure so we can resolve this matter quickly." The officer's shoulders slumped slightly and he took a deep breath. The crowd sensed that the turning point had arrived. He realized that pressing further could not only escalate the situation, but also reflect poorly on him in the eyes of the public. He had underestimated the woman's knowledge, composure, and authority. For a moment, silence fell over the street. The only sounds were distant traffic and the soft hum of the city. The tension between the woman and the officer had shifted from confrontation to cautious respect. The crowd held its collective breath, aware that the situation had changed dramatically. The woman's calm and measured approach had successfully asserted her authority without conflict, and the officer was forced to acknowledge it. The woman took one more step forward, her posture composed and confident. "Officer, I am here to cooperate fully. I only ask that we follow the proper process and respect the law. We can resolve this quickly and professionally." The officer finally nodded, lowering his hand completely. His face showed a mixture of embarrassment, relief, and cautious respect. The crowd began to murmur, some expressing admiration, others commenting on how well she had handled the situation. Phones continued recording, capturing a moment that would likely be shared widely. The tension that had gripped the street began to ease. The woman had successfully navigated a potentially dangerous confrontation with calmness, clarity, and authority. Her knowledge, composure, and quiet confidence had shifted the dynamics entirely. The officer now understood that he was dealing with someone who commanded respect, not through force, but through intelligence, patience, and presence. The city streets slowly returned to its normal rhythm. People resumed their activities, though many glanced back, still captivated by the encounter they had just witnessed. The woman stood for a moment, ensuring that the situation was fully resolved. She had handled the confrontation with grace, demonstrating that courage, knowledge, and composure could turn even a tense and unjust situation into a moment of clarity and respect. This was the pivotal moment. The woman's calm authority had revealed her true position, shifting the power dynamics and transforming the encounter into a public lesson in patience, intelligence, and the importance of understanding one's rights. The officer now knew that he had misjudged the situation, and the crowd had witnessed a display of quiet strength that left a lasting impression on all who observed it as the morning continued. The woman prepared to continue her day. The encounter had drawn attention, but she remained composed, confident in the knowledge that she had handled the situation correctly. The street, once ordinary and mundane, had become a scene of respect and admiration for her courage and poise. This moment, though challenging, had reinforced the power of calm, clear-headed action in the face of misunderstanding and authority. The stage was set for the next steps, where the story would continue to unfold, revealing even more about her strength and professionalism. The officer took a step back, his face a mixture of embarrassment and relief. The crowd's murmurs grew, a combination of astonishment and admiration for the woman who had just revealed her position as a state lawyer. The air was charged, but it no longer held the tension of confrontation. Instead, there was a sense of respect and recognition that the situation had shifted dramatically, ma'am. "I apologize," the officer said, his voice low and hesitant. He glanced around, aware that the people watching had witnessed his mistake. "I didn't know. I should have verified the situation more carefully." She nodded politely, her expression calm and composed. "Thank you, officer. I understand that mistakes happen. I appreciate your willingness to acknowledge it. I am willing to provide any necessary identification and clarification so this matter can be resolved." The crowd responded softly, some whispering words of encouragement, others commenting on her professionalism and patience. Phones continued to record the interaction, capturing a moment that would soon spread through social media. The woman's composure had turned a potentially volatile encounter into a lesson in dignity and respect. The officer's body language softened further. He seemed to realize the impact of his actions and the importance of handling the situation carefully now. "If you don't mind, could you please show your identification?" he asked, his voice more respectful than before. The woman handed him her state lawyer identification calmly, ensuring it was visible and easy to read. The officer studied it briefly, his expression a mix of awe and discomfort. "Thank you," he said, taking a step back and giving her space. He looked around at the crowd, who were still watching intently, and added, "I should have handled this differently. I will make sure to follow proper procedures in the future." The woman smiled slightly, a small gesture of reassurance. "I'm glad we could resolve this peacefully. Everyone benefits when respect and proper procedure are followed." The crowd's whispers became more audible, with people expressing admiration for her calm handling of the situation. One person said quietly, "She didn't yell or fight. She just stayed calm and made him understand," another added. "It's amazing how she turned this around without any aggression." The officer nodded, visibly relieved that the situation had ended without conflict. He adjusted his uniform as if to regain a sense of authority while acknowledging the lesson he had just learned. The woman maintained her posture, calm and composed, radiating a quiet strength that had guided the entire encounter. A few onlookers approached cautiously, wanting to ask questions or offer thanks. The woman remained professional, answering politely and briefly. It's important to know your rights and to handle situations with calm and clarity. Everyone should strive to resolve misunderstandings peacefully. The officer watched as the crowd slowly dispersed, some still murmuring about the incident. He seemed reflective, perhaps realizing that the way he had approached the situation could have been very different. The presence of witnesses had made the consequences more immediate, and the woman's calm authority had highlighted the importance of proper conduct. "Again, I apologize," he said quietly. "I should have been more careful. Thank you for handling this professionally." "Thank you, officer," she replied politely. "I'm glad we could reach a resolution without conflict. I hope this serves as a reminder of the importance of procedure and respect in all interactions." The crowd's attention shifted gradually back to their routines, but the impact of the encounter lingered. People talked in hushed tones, sharing their impressions and admiration. The woman's ability to maintain composure, assert her rights, and resolve the situation peacefully had left a lasting impression on those who witnessed it. She took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief and accomplishment. The encounter had tested her patience, clarity, and composure, but she had navigated it successfully. Her calm approach had not only protected her rights, but it also demonstrated the importance of handling difficult situations intelligently and respectfully as she continued walking down the street. The city seemed to return to its normal rhythm, yet the impact of the encounter remained. People exchanged glances, some nodding in recognition, others discussing the lessons they had witnessed. The woman's professionalism had created a ripple effect, showing that knowledge, calmness, and respect could turn a tense situation into a positive and educational experience. The officer watched her walk away, a mixture of respect and reflection on his face. He had learned an important lesson about authority, procedure, and the power of calm, confident communication. The crowd's reaction reinforced the idea that fairness, patience, and clarity could influence outcomes and inspire others. The woman entered her destination, still composed and professional, ready to continue her day. The encounter had been a test of her patience and skill, and she had passed with grace. She reflected on the importance of understanding one's rights, handling misunderstandings calmly, and using knowledge and composure to navigate difficult situations. The city continued around her, filled with people going about their routines, yet the story of the encounter had already begun to spread. Those who had witnessed it would carry the memory of her calm, authority, and professionalism. The encounter was more than a personal experience. It had become a public lesson in patience, respect, and the power of knowledge. The woman felt a quiet satisfaction. She had faced a potentially unjust situation and had handled it without aggression, without fear, and without compromise of her rights. She had turned a tense confrontation into a moment of clarity and respect, demonstrating that courage and composure could change outcomes. As she reflected on the morning, she understood that the experience was a reminder of the importance of professionalism and intelligence in every interaction. The lessons learned would stay with her, reinforcing the value of patience, clarity, and calm authority. She knew that encounters like these were rare, but when they occurred, the way one handled them could have a lasting impact. The officer, still observing from a distance, seemed to internalize the lesson as well. He had been reminded of the importance of procedure, respect, and careful judgment. The presence of witnesses, the calm authority of the woman, and the respectful resolution had created a situation that left a positive mark on all involved. The crowd dispersed. Conversations quieted, and the city returned to its normal pace. Yet the memory of the encounter lingered, a story of calm authority, knowledge, and respect that had turned a potentially negative situation into a moment of learning and admiration. The woman had demonstrated that intelligence, composure, and professional behavior could transform conflict into understanding. Leaving a lasting impression on everyone who had witnessed it, the woman walked away from the scene. Her steps calm and steady, the morning sunlight glinting off the city buildings. The encounter had been intense, but she had managed to navigate it with clarity and composure. As she moved down the street, she noticed the lingering attention from some of the onlookers. Some gave nods of respect, while others whispered quietly among themselves. The city had witnessed an unusual display of professionalism, patience, and quiet authority. She entered a nearby cafe to collect her thoughts and enjoy a moment of calm. The barista greeted her with a polite smile, unaware of the remarkable situation that had just unfolded outside. She ordered a coffee, taking a seat near the window, reflecting on the morning's events. Despite the tension and the potential danger, she felt a sense of satisfaction. She had faced an unjust attempt to detain her and had handled it without conflict, using her knowledge, patience, and calm authority to resolve the situation around her. The city continued its usual rhythm. People hurried past on their way to work, conversations filled the streets, and traffic moved steadily. Yet, the morning had left an impression on those who had witnessed the incident. The crowd that had gathered had seen more than a simple confrontation. They had seen the power of composure, intelligence, and respectful assertion of rights. It was a rare moment where calm, clear-headed action had made a visible impact. She sipped her coffee slowly, thinking about the lessons the encounter offered. Knowledge and preparation were vital, she reminded herself. Staying calm and measured, even when faced with authority acting unjustly, was crucial. Every movement, every word, had consequences, and her careful approach had turned what could have been a negative situation into a moment of respect and understanding as she sat. A few people who had observed the encounter approached cautiously, wanting to speak with her. They expressed admiration for the way she had handled the situation, asking questions about how she had remained so calm and composed. She answered politely, emphasizing the importance of knowing one's rights, staying patient, and maintaining respect, even in tense situations. Her words were simple but impactful, resonating with the people listening. Knowledge and composure are powerful tools, she told them. Understanding your rights and remaining calm can prevent escalation and create opportunities for resolution. It's not about winning or losing. It's about handling situations with integrity and clarity. Absorbing her advice. Some took notes on their phones, others simply listened attentively. Her approach had inspired them, offering a practical demonstration of courage, intelligence, and professional conduct in the face of unfair treatment. Outside, the city carried on, but the memory of the encounter lingered. The officer had returned to his duties, visibly more reflective, perhaps reconsidering his approach to similar situations in the future. The presence of witnesses and the woman's calm authority had left an impression not only on the public, but also on the officer himself. It was a reminder that every action, particularly by those in authority, carried responsibility and consequence. The woman finished her coffee and prepared to leave. She had meetings to attend, cases to handle, and responsibilities awaiting her attention. Yet she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The morning's events had reinforced her belief in the importance of professionalism, patience, and knowledge. They had also reminded her that standing calmly and assertively for one's rights could inspire others and create meaningful change. As she stepped back onto the street, she noticed people glancing at her with subtle respect. The encounter had turned into a public demonstration of the power of composed, intelligent action. She walked with confidence, not arrogance, her head held high, her movements deliberate and steady. The city had witnessed her strength. She had done so without aggression or confrontation. Throughout the day, she reflected on the subtle power dynamics that had played out. Authority, when exercised without respect or understanding, could lead to tension and conflict. But when met with calm, knowledge, and patience, it could be guided toward resolution and mutual understanding. She had seen this firsthand, and the experience would influence how she approached future interactions. By the afternoon, the story of the encounter had begun to spread. People who had witnessed it shared their impressions, highlighting the woman's calm, professional, and composed handling of a tense situation. The incident became a conversation point, a reminder of the importance of knowing one's rights and handling challenging encounters with intelligence and poise. It was a story that emphasized patience, understanding, and the quiet strength of standing one's ground respectfully. She continued her work with renewed focus. Aware that the morning had tested her patience and clarity, she met with colleagues, reviewed case files, and handled responsibilities with the same calm, composed manner that had guided her through the encounter. The experience had reinforced her confidence in her abilities and the importance of maintaining professionalism under pressure. As evening approached, she walked home through the city streets, reflecting on the lessons of the day. She understood that knowledge, composure, and clear communication were not just tools for professional life, but for navigating everyday challenges. The encounter had demonstrated that standing calmly for one's rights could influence outcomes and inspire respect. Even in situations that initially seemed difficult or unfair, the city lights began to illuminate the streets, casting a warm glow over the sidewalks. She walked with purpose, aware that the morning's events had not only tested her patience, but also reinforced her understanding of how to handle challenging situations with dignity and authority. Her calm, composed approach had left a lasting impression on those who witnessed it, turning a potentially negative incident into a public lesson in professionalism and respect. By the time she reached home, she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The morning had been a challenge, but she had handled it with intelligence, patience, and clarity. She had faced an unjust situation, navigated it calmly, and emerged with respect and understanding. The experience was a testament to the power of knowledge, composure, and professionalism in the face of adversity. Sitting down to reflect, she knew that the story would stay with her. The encounter had reinforced her belief in the importance of patience, clear communication, and understanding one's rights. It was a reminder that every interaction, particularly with authority, required calm, informed action. Her quiet strength and composed handling of the situation had turned a potentially confrontational encounter into a moment of respect, learning, and admiration. The evening quiet settled around her, and she felt a sense of peace. The city, full of movement and life, had witnessed her professionalism, and she had demonstrated the power of calm authority and clear thinking. The lessons of the day were clear. Knowledge, patience, and respect could transform conflict into understanding. She had proven that standing firmly and calmly for one's rights could inspire others, to influence outcomes, and create meaningful change in even the most unexpected circumstances.